In 2022, bypassing Western sanctions, the warehouses of Russian airlines were supplied with $14 million worth of spare parts. The New York Times writes about this, citing Russian customs data. Parts manufacturers are Boeing and Airbus corporations. Components were sold to Russia through third parties, and the illegal supply scheme was organized by two Russians who live in the United States. They face jail time for violating US export controls and for money laundering.
For instance, dozens of shipments of copper wires, bolts, graphite and other parts marked as made in the United States by Boeing slipped into the warehouses of Aeroflot last year. They traversed obscure trading companies, free trade zones and industrial parks in the United Arab Emirates and China, and then traveled into Russia to help patch up Aeroflot's dilapidated fleet. Anna Swanson and Niraj Chokshi from an article of the New York Times.
The American corporation Boeing said that it had suspended the supply of parts, maintenance and technical support for customers in Russia at the beginning of 2022, and an Airbus representative assured that the airline checks everyone who requests spare parts. According to experts, there is no legal way to supply genuine aircraft parts, documentation and services to Russia.
The shipments also increased over the course of last year as Russia recruited global businesses to help it bypass the sanctions. The trend suggests that networks for evading sanctions took time to establish during the immediate post-export control scramble, but are now in a position to help Russian airlines source some key parts. William George, director of research at Import Genius, in an interview with the New York Times.
In the context of tough Western sanctions, the supply of aircraft parts to Russia through grey schemes is very limited. Prior to Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, according to the Observatory of Economic Complexity, more than $3 billion worth of planes and aircraft parts were imported into the Federation annually. In 2022, parts worth $300 million were delivered.
Within a month or two, the Russian air fleet will not stop, but we see that the processes that began a year ago are first of all restrictions on the use of certain aircraft. This is what is already part of the fleet, this is about 5 to 10%. It is already on the ground and is actually a donor of spare parts for other aircraft.
The largest Russian airline, Aeroflot, allows passengers to fly aircraft that do not have a full set of oxygen cylinders on board. According to Medusa, citing anonymous sources, employees of Russian airlines were ordered to fix aircraft multifunctions less often, since there are no spare parts to fix them.
Untimely service, delay in carrying out certain routine maintenance, it ultimately leads to a decrease in the level of flight safety. This, first of all, threatens with more serious breakdowns. This threatens with the loss of an aircraft, plane crashes and incidents with certain aircraft.
According to the New York Times, Russian airlines were forced to turn to Tehran for help. We are talking about maintenance and supply of new parts for Russian aircraft.
The Iranian airline Mahan Air showed a video service of the aircraft of the Russian Aeroflot. This is a Western-made Airbus A330-300 airliner, which, due to sanctions, cannot be officially repaired. From an article of the New York Times.
According to the American non-profit organization Silverado Policy Accelerator, China has become the leading exporter of parts for Russian aircraft. In second place is India. However, according to analysts of the Syrian company, the number of passenger aircraft in Russia has fallen by about 16%. The number of airliners on international routes is up to 40. According to aviation experts, it will be increasingly difficult for Russian airlines to continue flying without access to Western suppliers. Reported by Roman Smoler, Христина Домбровська, UATV News.